Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the Best Darn Everything show, our sub-podcast for the Best Darn Diddly Review show, where we take a break from talking about The Simpsons to talk about other cool stuff we love. My name is Miles, better known as Mr. Most Days Off, and I've said we a bunch, so let me introduce to you your co-host with the most, Richie the Whiz Kid. How you doing today, Rich?
Oh, wait. I'm doing fine and dandy like sour candy. I'm very intrigued to hear some behind the scenes stuff on this episode. So I think we got like the perfect guest to come along and be more like the host in this one. So let's go ahead and get going. Miles, I'll throw it back to you. The man, the myth. He might still be in an escape room right now. It is Miles.
Isn't life like one big escape room, man?
I meant this podcast.
When you can't I don't think we're going to make it out of this podcast in an hour. I'll just say that right now. You already brought her up. You said she could host. I'd say she might headline this podcast because she is a good friend of mine and a comedian here in DFW. She's been on the other version of the show, Mr. Most Days Off Loves Everything, to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. But tonight she's here to spread her expertise about escape rooms. Welcome, Ruth Banks.
Hello.
Ruth, how are you doing? I'm so excited to have you on the show tonight.
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be on the show.
So when we first decided that we were going to start doing this side project, taking a break from The Simpsons and alternating back and forth to talk about these other things, this topic was immediately at the top of our list of things that we want to talk about, because Richie and I have now done several escape rooms together. We're total nerds for the that type of entertainment. And we specifically knew that we wanted to work with you to make sure that we could get with your schedule so that you could be a guest on the show, because you are literally, as Richie said, the perfect guest for this topic for a bunch of reasons. How about I let you introduce why, what your background with escape rooms are?
Yeah, so I worked for about 3 years in an escape room setting. It was also an axe throwing venue, but it really started as a singular escape room when I started working there, and then it really grew into something else. But so I've always loved escape rooms. I've done escape rooms in multiple different countries. I've done several different kinds of escape rooms, but really just my experience working in an escape room has really changed the way I view them and enjoy them.
That's really cool. Also, just the fact that you've done them in other countries, I think that's fascinating. And I know I'm going to have questions about that. But when did you actually start working in the escape room business, I guess?
So I was fresh out of college, and then I just dropped out. And
Samesies.
Yeah, my parents, who own a business together, had just done a team building exercise with their office, and they had done this escape room that sounded so cool. So it was an escape room with live actors in the room. So I decided I'm a dropout theater major. What better way than being a live actor in an escape room to submit being a dropout theater major?
I can't believe they actually made jobs for people like me. Amazing.
Yeah. They actually, in the requirements, it was a college degree is disqualifying. And I was like, oh, perfect. I'm making that up.
Told you, Mom and Dad.
Yeah. So I went and applied, and actually the application process for working in the escape room was going through the escape room with a group, because genuinely, there's no better way to find out what kind of person someone is than watching them go through an escape room. So it's hey, how do you work under pressure? I don't know. Put me in an escape room. You'll find out. That's.
I work best when the countdown is getting down to 0. That's
Absolutely.
And also while I still have 1, maybe 2 clues remaining.
So I applied, and then it was a singular room being rented out of a haunted house at the time that I worked there. And then we had our own facility by the end of things.
So can I try something here real quick? Because of the way the camera angles are going right now, Miles, I need you to lower your head down just a little bit, this much. And Ruth, no, Miles, still look at the camera. And Ruth, I need you to stand up slightly, because you guys are going to actually look like you're one whole person together.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
almost.
I love the fact that the majority of the people actually listen to this as a podcast. So you just lost that. That's why you should be watching this on Get Vocal or YouTube. You are missing out on these bits where Ruth and I just made it look like we had one combined head, and that really truly is your loss.
Listeners. Yeah.
I wanted to say, Ruth, so in that you mentioned in the room that you started in, it was actually part of like a haunted house, which I think is very relevant to a story that you told me that we're going to get to. But I wanted to mention that I know at one point you were like managing the escape room, but you started as like an actor in the room. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were actually a zombie in the zombie escape room actually went on to become very popular for some reason while you were working there. Would you like to talk about that?
Yes. So actually the story of how it became very popular predates me working there, but not by long. It's not, I would say it's not incredibly standard to have live actors in escape rooms in the first place.
I think there's only been one that we've done, and it was the 1980s party that that same company eventually went on to do.
That is, yes. Which I won't say like brand names because I don't want to feel obligated to only be glowing about them.
We'll make sure to tag them in all our social media posts.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's not incredibly standard to have actors in the room to begin with. And then our particular room, you were acting as a zombie. So not only were you in the room, you were like a threat against the people solving the room. You were like trying to actively dissuade them. Scare them off, get in their way, that kind of deal. So it was a very intense job. Like people were in what they felt was a very high pressure situation. And then I was stopping them from reaching their goal. Like that was, there was some combat situations. Like it got messy a few times. We had two characters in the room. There was Professor von Gutenberg and then the zombie. And the zombie was very lucky that Professor von Gutenberg was there because the professor's job was basically to referee and make sure the zombie didn't get the crap beat out of them. Like, genuinely.
So I want to hear like a specific example of that. Like it's I mean, I assume the timer runs out and then they're turned into zombies, but like it's how many times did the referee have to side with the zombie here?
So there were just several different instances. Obviously, you're in like a business type situation, so you don't just want to like be a complete asshole to them, but you also like, am I allowed to curse?
You say what?
No.
Okay. Okay. But I remember one situation in particular where the first sign was I had reached up to steal a clue from on top of the table, and the only woman in the group had grabbed a book and whacked my hand with it. Which like right off the bat. So I immediately just like waved down at the professor and like told her what happened. And she went over and goes, "Hey, you can't do that." And our professor was pretty like straight to the point, especially the one who was working there at this point. And she goes, "Oh no, I didn't do that. I would never do that." So then she's just like calling me a liar, and I'm still nursing my hand. Like it's actively throbbing.
Do they have to on camera too?
Well, so we didn't have cameras in the room at the time.
Oh, wow.
Which again I think was a big mistake. We really needed them. But we didn't have cameras. It was a very like that whole escape room was held together by orange duct tape. I love it to death. Holds a very special place in my heart. 99% orange duct tape.
We just saw the other side of the tape.
No, the room you would see the orange duct tape.
Oh, you literally saw it held together. Okay, wow.
You literally saw the.
Yeah, I guess you had to change to a construction theme.
Yeah.
So the event I was actually alluding to does feature cameras.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So I know what you're talking about. So before I had worked there was a show called Big Bang Theory, and they did an episode where all the really smart guys went to an escape room, and the joke was they escaped really fast. And they had actually based that off of the zombie room that I worked in. So
that's weird because like when you said that, that's what it reminded me of. Like literally, that's exactly what it reminded me of.
So on one hand, it kind of skyrocketed, I think, their business kind of overnight, but also they then had to change the clues because they used real clues from the room. So like, overnight, their clues became unusable.
You would think a show about nerds would know not to spoil things.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I seem to remember them saying the owner saying that they had not asked permission and that it was a surprise to them. Also, I now feel like there has to legally have been some discussion there, and I have to be misremembering that. But in my memory, like there was no a-okay about that situation. It just happened.
I'm sure the lawyers probably researched that and they're like, "No, we're in the clear, steal it all."
We're in the clear,
they didn't file their paperwork right. They put it on orange duct tape, and that doesn't count.
That doesn't count.
We'll sue them for using our idea in real life.
Also, let's see if we can get a patent on orange duct tape.
The other thing that happened before my time at the escape room, which I really wish I had been there for, was this team building company who was doing an event for this huge company in Mexico. Actually approached the owner of the business and was like, "Hey, we want to do this escape room, but in Mexico. What would that look like?" And he originally was like, "Oh, that's not really. We don't really travel with it. That's not like our deal." And he was like, "Okay, but like money isn't an object.
I got
Like, what does that
cartel
look
money.
like?"
Now talk to me.
And then he was like, "Oh, okay." And so he like named some ridiculous number and it was fine. And so suddenly they were taking the room to Mexico, and they found like so many different like local artists to like help them with the room that the room in Mexico ended up being like way cooler than the room that like we had at home in Dallas. So that was a very cool experience. Like, I wish I could like move an escape room to Mexico.
Did you
That'd be
get
so
to
much
participate in that? Like, were you actually in Mexico?
No.
Because you had mentioned you've done them in other
No.
countries. I was wondering if that was.
Yes.
was the part.
So I have done an escape room in Mexico, and I've done an escape room in Sweden. The escape room in Sweden is actually very different. I don't know. I'm sure they have like escape rooms like we would think of them, but this escape room was. I don't know if higher tech is the right word because I was like 12 or 13 at the time, so my perception may have been different. But the whole idea was that you were trying to complete certain puzzles in the room or tasks in the room, and if you didn't, the room would black out. And that meant that you had failed that room, so you all had to exit the room. Most of the tasks were like, you all had to be standing in certain places, so you'd have to do like acrobatic feats to like swing on this rope and catch this lever and like lift yourself up this cliff to like press this
That's
button.
cool.
And then you all get in your own areas and press these buttons. Or like I specifically remember army crawling under a hole in a wall to like get to a smaller room to press this one button. There was some wild stuff, and so I've never found anything like that here in
That
America.
sounds very similar to something that Richie and I did for his birthday like 2 years ago now. Pre-COVID.
Oh, yeah.
It's actually in Louisville. There's a place that it's called The Labyrinth. And they basically describe it as like a live action arcade game, but a lot of the things you just described sound very, very similar to those, but each room is different. Like you just have different goals. Some of them are more, they're all rated between like how difficult they are mentally and physically. And like you'll see a rating scale on both.
Interesting.
And Richie and I it kicked our ass. I think it's safe to say.
We were there for
we
like
had a
6
really
hours.
good time. We were there all day, and it was a really, really fun time. But I remember being both like physically and mentally exhausted at the end of it.
Well,
That is so cool. I
we
wanna
tried the
try that.
5-star highest rated difficulty physical one at the end of the day after we'd already been doing everything.
Because we
And
didn't
that-
find it. It was called the ninja. It was basically like a mini Ninja Warrior. And like there was this one part in particular that we both kept getting stuck on. Like either one of us would make it, the other wouldn't, or we both wouldn't because we were exhausted. But we didn't find it till the very end of the day when we both had already had our ass whipped.
That place was cool because like you get rewards, you get little cards that you scan when you leave, and it shows how like what point you got to, and you get reward points based on that. And they had like basically a loot crate system where if you have a certain number of points, you get a loot crate that's got like a bunch of putt-putt prizes in it or something. So I thought that was a neat little incentive to get you to come back. But
That is super.
And
My
that
favorite
place
part-
recently reopened, so maybe we should be planning a little trippy trip here because there's a lot of really fun. Like again, it's a variety of puzzles, and they all have like there's one that was based on like robbing a bank. There's one that was based on like pirating. There was a Viking room. A floor is lava room. That one was really cool.
that was cool. There were a few rooms that weren't 100% working when we went there because they were the lava room was one that I wish was working because we were doing it, and they basically had to give us credit for it. Like after they watched us do it like 3 times without failing, but we knew what we were doing. It just wasn't registering. But my favorite part of that experience was still there was a room that was like for 3 or 4 or more people, or it might have been 4 or more. In the first room, you basically have to do something to get the second door to open. And Miles and I,
you had to create a human current.
I didn't want to give it away. But yeah, I guess
spoiler alert. Fuck it. I thought we might spoil some rooms on tonight's show. I forgot to say that up front, but there's a good chance we might spoil a clue or two. But go ahead, Richie.
It's basically like a Saw type setup where there's a bunch of torture rooms. But the first room, they had these walking bars that you had to be walking on, and there was a chain at each end of the room, and you basically had to have one person touching each chain and make a connection by people the whole way around.
Like you're supposed to hold hands with a group of people to make it connect.
Interesting.
But Richie and I were doing it with just the two of us, so we did this crazy like pose where we both put our foot out and we actually crossed our ankles, and we were able to make it work with that.
Oh, that's one of those moments like the game master is watching and just like has his phone out. It's like throwing hands, like
we're like a meme on some random like escape room like Facebook group.
Absolutely.
My favorite part about that's when like this couple, this whole group was waiting to go in there, and they saw us walking out of the second or the last room, and they failed, and they came out, and we were waiting behind them, and they were like, how in the world did you guys get past the first room with just 2 people? I'm like, I don't know. And we just go back in and do it again.
Ancient escape room secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ruth, I had a question for you. We talked a little about you working, and we'll probably have more questions from the business side of things too. But were you a fan of these types of games before you worked in them, or like did you work in them before you became a fan?
No, I've always been a big fan of escape rooms. I grew up on like mysteries, like Scooby-Doo was my favorite show growing up. Then like Nancy Drew, they had the Nancy Drew point and click PC games. Like I was and like escape rooms pretty much are like a live action PC
100%, yeah.
game. Like that's what they are.
I played one on addictinggames.com where you were like in some weird alien bunker and like trying to figure out like who you were. And I've actually tried to find that game like recently, but you type that into Google and it doesn't exactly give like clear results.
Were you high?
No,
yes or no?
Not then. But no, I've always really, really enjoyed escape rooms. I know the Sweden one I went to because that was like early teens that I went to the Sweden
How
one.
did that happen?
I don't
why were you in Sweden? And then like, how did you end up at an escape room because of that?
So there was this organization called like CISV, which was supposedly and not to dish, I love CISV. It was a great experience. But it sounds very like conceited to say because there was like a world peace kind of organization. So you would like go.
Oh yeah, we definitely don't endorse that on this show.
Oh, it was a cult.
No, it just sounds like weird to be like, oh, I was, instigating world peace by like going to Sweden as a 12-year-old. Like,
does it still hurt where they branded you?
You guys sing a song in a group together?
You just try and like really make your country seem cool when you had people visiting. So they would just take you to all the fun spots, and
this was on the radar.
Places
that makes me wonder, like where the escape games originated. Do you have any idea of like where the mecca is for this industry?
Yeah, I do know I don't want to say no, but as soon as you asked me that, I seem to remember my old boss telling me it started in Europe and they were big in Europe, and then they got brought over here. So I think Europe, they have kind of like a bigger industry for them.
Was the Sweden one your very first experience?
I believe so.
And
yes.
Do you recall there being any significant differences with the puzzles overseas versus the Americanized puzzles, or like do you feel like they're almost identical?
Well, so the Sweden one was just such a different thing. Like it was more of a physical challenge.
Oh yeah, that's almost like the Ninja Warrior type thing we were describing, or aspects of it.
Yeah. But I did do one in Mexico, and it did feel very similar to an escape room. I did almost wonder if there was a like a company that had kind of, because it was at a resort in Mexico, like where a lot of American people like would have been staying. So I wonder if it was kind of like a subcontractor had come in and built it, and it was like a dime a dozen, just like escape room you can put in kind of deal. The escape room in Mexico, it was almost an interesting like human experiment, because the whole idea, obviously Spoiler alert for escape rooms, but it's illegal to actually lock people in a room. So the door
Hey,
is
I've
always
seen several
unlocked.
horror movies
Yeah.
where they do lock the door, and it gets weird.
Oh, well, you know what the most reliable source of information is?
Is my Shutter
typically.
account?
Oh, yeah. But so in this escape room, you were waiting for a light to light up above the door, and that was how you would know you had won. So the escape room took you across 3 different rooms, and in the 3rd room, you had to crawl into a box where there were like switches. And the whole idea was get the switches the correct way based on clues, and the light lights up. So I was inside the box flipping the switches, and my aunt was standing in the other room calling for if the light got turned on. And so we got to this final clue with probably 20 minutes to spare. And I'm pretty sure I know what the combination is. So I flip it, no light. And so I start, okay, maybe I messed up this. I'm trying a few other variants, no light. Finally, there are only 4 switches and they can each go one way. So I just start trying every combination. We've got 20 minutes. We drive ourselves, it's my family. Like, it is my family in this room. We drive ourselves insane trying every combination of these goddamn switches. Finally, the time runs out, and the dude walks in and goes, "Oh my gosh, you guys, why didn't you get out? The light was on. You escaped. You solved it."
Apparently, there's a burned out light bulb.
Yep, burned out fucking light
So
bulb.
I have like one of the more disappointing experiences. One of them was with Richie, but that one reminds me of one of the few experiences that I had where I was really disappointed in a room that Richie and I didn't do together. And it was kind of similar to that, where the last puzzle, you had to have like all these information from other puzzles to kind of make the last puzzle make sense. And basically, once you had the other puzzle solved, you knew which path you were supposed to follow. And like, I was like 99.9% sure I had it on the first try, but it didn't work. So I'm like, so I'm trying all these other things. And finally, we had like used our clues at this point, but I radio the guy and I'm like, hey, we need help. Like, I think something's wrong. We at least like come verify this on. And long story short, they come back and they did the very first thing I tried. And he's like, doesn't seem to be working. Well, you guys won. And it was like
such a disappointing feeling.
It didn't feel like it, like it did not feel like we had won. Versus other times, like I know Richie and I will have one we'll talk about where we felt like gods at the end of it. But there was another one that kind of a similar experience. This one Richie and I did together. Overall, the room was really, really good. I don't remember what the theme was at this time. It was like foreign spies, maybe, but the last clue, you had to use a magnifier to read like this card where it gave you the right path to get the last combination.
We were SWAT teams trying to defuse a bomb, like find out why the mad scientist had the bomb, and then we had to defuse it. And it was a vision puzzle, which I'm like, I'm out. I can't. No, it's too small. I can't see.
I have relatively good vision. Like I don't know. I haven't tested in a while, but I still feel like I see very well, and I've never needed corrective lenses or anything. This magnifier was just so scratched up that it made it very difficult to follow the path that was on. So, I mean, it took us like that one clue, it should have probably taken 2, maybe 3 minutes tops. Probably took us like 15 minutes to beat.
There's one with the crossing wires. We had to follow the wire all the way around, and it was this huge glob of wire. But like they even admitted that like it doesn't look quite as well as it was. Like when the place is admitting to you that like it's not up to snuff, like you feel cheated almost when that happens.
Yeah.
Well, and like the victory example I told you a second ago, that just like, I mean, that was just the absolute worst in terms of it's like, oh, you won. It's like, did I? I feel like you took money from me, and then we got a lackluster experience. But yeah, that was an example of like a bad room. I guess let's go on. Go ahead, Rich.
Before we go to the good ones, I want to say I've quote unquote verified on numerous sources that Japan is where escape rooms started from on Google. There's a video game called Crimson Room in like 2004, and a company in Japan decided to try to make a live action version of it. And that started in like 2007, which they made the first tangible escape room experience. So looks like it started in Japan, which that totally makes sense.
Yeah, that tracks.
Completely tracks. I actually wasn't ready to switch over to good ones yet. I actually wanted to ask both of you, and we'll start with Ruth. What is and we won't call anybody out, but just talk about the worst escape room experience that you've had.
So I'm going to maybe answer the question not in the spirit in which you meant it.
Did you get broken up
worst
with in an
escape
escape
room.
room and it was amazing, but like it ruined your day?
If only I could escape this room like we're escaping this
Well-
relationship.
No. But I was gonna say that the room itself was very good. It was just the people I was with made it such
And
a
that's
tough
that is a
experience
huge
that it was, like,
aspect. That is an
it's so
excuse me.
crucial.
That is an absolutely important aspect of your experience. And for us, we've never had to book privately because we always go like randomly during the week when like kids are in school and shit. But like you do need to be aware that if you are thinking, like if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, wow, I just thought escape rooms sound cool, and now I definitely want to try them. Be careful when you book them, because if you end up in like somebody's birthday party, it's a real weird time.
Yeah. Mine actually was, so at the escape room where I worked, when we were getting a new escape room, we trained on it by going through the escape room as a group. So corporate would come in and set it up, and then our employees, our first exposure to it would be going through it. And by the time I left, the people I worked with were, well, okay, you've heard some of my stand-up. But most of the people I worked with were pretty cool. Some exceptions notwithstanding. You know,
And you can't get it up.
More on that coming in my Netflix special.
Did you say coming?
Not he's not. But I had a pretty toxic work environment at one point, and it was like the manager was like dating the one other person I worked with, and it was
That's
just
why you
a real
escaped that
bad.
job.
Eventually, but
She needed a
they
few
left
clues to get out
so,
first, though.
You know. But it was just one of those situations where, like, not to toot my own horn, but I'm pretty good at escape rooms at this point. And I would say, like, hey, what if I think this is probably what it is? And they'd, like, roll their eyes and go on with their own thing. And then eventually 10 minutes later be like, oh, I think it's this. And I'd be like, if only someone had said something like that sooner, we could have saved.
But then they do that thing where they
time.
act like you didn't do it.
And then you just feel like a bitch. You just feel like a bitch, even though you're right.
That's frustrating.
We-
Richie, what
we
about
did
you?
a-
What was your worst?
I honestly, man, besides that one that you talked about with us earlier with the wires, because that just completely pulled me out of the moment where I was like, I feel like I can't contribute, and I feel like if Miles is having difficulty seeing this, then it just completely takes me out of the moment.
Well, and
Unless that
also
was-
let's talk about like ableism for a second. Like we should be prepared to like understand that like if I had to wear glasses to have that vision, that would have been so difficult. And like, what if you have something like a fingerprint on your contact lens? Like that to me was like I know we're kind of like splitting hairs a little bit. To me, that seems like an oversight type of trap.
No,
I think it's just
definitely
when the
agree.
games aren't working properly. Like the Labyrinth, there were some rooms in there that were just really malfunctioning bad, and it also took me out of the moment. But like that whole experience overall, that was a whole lot of fun. So that takes over from that. It's going back to what you guys talked about, where it's the people you're with. The very first one I did was with Miles, I believe, for his birthday many, many years ago. We had I feel like 12 people in that room.
I think
It
we
was
got lucky as hell, honestly, on that. But I'm sorry,
I don't even remember. Did we make it through that with 6 minutes left, or did we fail that?
So that one we did, and it was our very first one, and it was very similar to like an Uncharted, the video game series, or Tomb Raider maybe is another one. Kind of like a jungle temple type of thing where you're trying to escape from that environment. And it was like 4 or 5 of our friends, and then a birthday party of like kids.
With like
But
12-year-olds.
But to those kids' credit, they were actually like they kind of were like, look, we were like doing well, and they kind of like worked with us, and they were like almost like I
That was eventually. At first, they were all just scatterbrained everywhere. Then they finally started listening to us.
But they started like I hate to make it sound like that, but they are essentially our minions, and it worked out really well.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of, we were solving the puzzles, and like we were kind of sending them on tasks, and it worked out like really, really well. And I think that if like just thinking of that had gone another way, where it was like the birthday party from hell, and they were just ruining everything. We might not have ever gotten into this, but like we fell in love. Like we were immediately looking for Groupons and like that's the first thing we did is we did a Groupon deal for like every place in the DFW that had one available, and like we're always looking for deals and things on that. That kind of does bring me on to the next topic I wanted to talk about. I think we can all agree that there are some cliches in the escape room industry. And Rich, I'm actually going to let Richie go first on this one, Ruth, because I feel like you're going to have some deeper cuts than the two of us are. So I'm going to just say, I'm sorry, I'm going to let Richie go, then I'm going to go, then I'm going to let Ruth go, because I feel like you're going to be able to really clean up on this one.
Oh, God,
You just mean like escape room cliches?
Mhm.
Like how there's inevitably going to be some kind of number on the back of random items on the bookshelf, or like at one point you'll need a flashlight or a black light to see something that you previously couldn't see.
So for me, actually, what I was going to say is I think the biggest cliche in the theming is the prison escape. I think like literally every.
Have you done that one before though?
I've done
Have
like
you?
six. I've done like
Oh,
six
okay.
of those. So
I've
that's
heard
my
you like
point.
That's one of my
Is-
favorite experiences in the prison escape.
I
room,
didn't
though.
say it was bad. Cliche doesn't mean bad. I'm just saying that literally it's like if you've built an escape room in 2020 or 2021 now, whatever, you probably have a prison escape theme as one of your options.
I feel like they cater to like the library escape room theme, or like the ancient ruin type thing. It's like a combination of those two, where like you have some old details of some old dusty map that leads you on a random adventure, kind of like an Uncharted, I guess. I feel like that's pretty popular too.
Yeah.
But I mean, heck, we did one after the first Jumanji movie came out where it was Jumanji themed, and I was like, we've already done a jungle themed one before, but whatever.
To be fair, you mean the second Jumanji, the first
no.
The Rock Jumanji movie. But yeah, honestly, I was going to talk about the Jumanji one being one of the more positive experiences, because that was a very low budget escape room, but they did a great job with the theming. And like, while their puzzles were not very high tech, they were very simple and basic. They still did a really good job.
Couldn't count the snake.
What's that?
We missed one of the snakes in that one room, though.
That was the counting room was actually one of the puzzles. Spoiler alert, was like you had the combination, and they basically told you it was like spiders, snakes, lizards, and like literally just scattered throughout the room. There was all sorts of like rubber snakes, rubber lizards, rubber bugs, whatever it was, and you had to like count them. And that could actually be really daunting in certain situations, because it wasn't like it was well lit. So you're going out with like a flashlight. It's not like they're in rows and columns. Like you're having to really like work to keep track of these numbers. And it was really fun.
We missed a snake on the doorknob for what it was worth.
And that's why, yeah. And it was one of those where we were still trying, but like finally, like the game master took mercy, and they're like, guys, you're off. You're missing one that's like behind the door. And it's like, okay, we didn't really win, did we?
It counts in the victory column.
I guess I agree with you. There does seem to be always the Tomb Raider. I wasn't even thinking when I brought up cliches about like the cliche puzzles, but that's actually another good thing to kind of go down there. There does seem to be some of the certain ones that are always going to be somewhat the same.
Yeah, but still at the same time, like it's good to have that, because you learn after you've done a few rooms. I am so much of an overthinker, like to the max. I'll be like, this one clue in the first room is going to pay off in like 3 rooms, and I'm the only one that's going to be able to figure it out. And it's going to be something completely
You're like,
random.
that was legitimately just the emergency light. Like that doesn't.
And they're always. I'm glad that nowadays in most escape rooms, they're like, once you use a clue, it's gone. Or they'll say like, don't overthink. And one of the big ones that works for everybody that we always play with too is like, if it's not meant to move, then it's not going to move. If it's something you're supposed to move, it'll move very easily, because some people are going like, trying to move the pieces on a wall, and it's not
I always
moving.
win because I bring a crowbar.
There you go.
So Ruth, I think that there's still many that we haven't talked about. What are some of the other cliches in the industry that you'd like to bring up?
Yeah, so you both hit on like some really strong ones. I think there are different cliches of the different generations of escape rooms, because there are kind of 3, I don't want to say tiers, but I guess generations really is a good word of escape rooms. Like there's the physical lock, pen and paper. There are some escape rooms that are just that, and it's, cross-referencing books with other books and coming up with combinations. And then there are second-gen escape rooms, which are mag locks. And my favorite mag lock kind of stereotype for an escape room, it's such a little thing that maybe somebody who doesn't spend so much time around escape rooms wouldn't notice. But I love the obviously triggered by the game master mag lock. Like you put this vase in the right spot and suddenly this thing pops open. Like And like sometimes there's a couple second delay while the
Oh,
game
shit,
master
pop.
is eating a dip.
I didn't realize that's what was happening.
Pop. Like that's my favorite just room escape moment when you put something down and you wait and then you hear a mag lock click just on the other side of the room. You're like, aha, that
or it's
that's where
like
I'm
30
going.
seconds late and they're
But
like,
then
hey, sorry, I was on the phone.
yeah. And then there's the third generation escape rooms when it's like no longer mag locks. This is like technological to the extreme. Like you're stepping on stepping stones.
Probably
that are
more like
lining up
that
as you're
Labyrinth
stepping
or
on
the
them kind of
Swedish
deal.
experience that you talked about. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And for that one, my favorite one is like finding out that something is a clue and part of it that you totally thought was just part of the decor because it's all so good. Like I feel like in the first and second gen escape rooms, you can tell.
It's like
oh,
you
that's
mentioned
a
Scooby Doo
clue, that's a
earlier.
clue,
When you're
that's a
watching old
clue.
Scooby Doo cartoons, you can see the
Yes.
background and then you can see, hey, that locker's slightly different color than the rest, and it's the one that opens.
Yes, it's the one that opens. They're like, oh, weird. Velma like opened this drawer in the broke innkeeper's desk, and there's just like piles of cash that's bright. Green.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
odd. He's supposed to
totally.
be broke. Like just
Darn
the very
kids.
obvious coloring. There are lots of things about the game master's speech that are also very stereotypical. Richie picked up on one, like if you can't don't put like you don't need to put any force into things, don't climb on things, don't tear anything apart, don't try and
Don't
destroy
have
the room.
fun.
Basically it will be fine. And then another one I feel like is very good is the sassy game master, because the game masters hear these same questions because people typically get stuck in the same spot in escape rooms. Like we typically know we're going to get stuck because we know there are some puzzles that frankly just make
Sure.
less sense than others, and some are easy jumps, and some. My favorite one and again, slight spoiler alert. We were trying to stop, and again, a theme stereotype is trying to stop some sort of catastrophe. That's always what it is because it's a countdown. What are you going to count down to other than like a catastrophe? So we were trying to stop the poisoning of this water supply. And at one point, this thing popped open, and there was a little curly wire and some wire cutters. And I looked up and I go, Kenny was our game master's name. Kenny, are we going to get in trouble if we cut these wires? And in the driest voice possible, Kenny goes, what kind of tool you got there? And I, in my smallest voice, go, wire cutters? No more answer from Kenny. That's
a good
That's our
answer, though.
answer.
Honestly, that's cool.
And I relate to that so hard because there are so many things that once you as the game master have been through the room and have seen it 100 times seems so obvious to you. But also if you use your empathy skills, you do know that the first time it's harder. But it's so hard not to be sassy at a point when like the answer is so obvious to you. That was the hardest part for me of working as a live actor in an escape room, was having compassion for people going through the escape room for the first time, because it's so frustrating sometimes
Just
to watch them just circle the drain.
Oh my God, you idiot! It's the green one. Come on. I completely feel that. And actually, I think maybe even in ways that we didn't appreciate or haven't appreciated as much as we should, and might more so after this conversation, the game master really does make a huge impact on your enjoyment of the game. Like we've been going to a place most recently with our friend Randy, who unfortunately he was supposed to be here tonight, but he wasn't able to make it. But we've actually been going there recently. It's a place called the Red Door. This is all pre-COVID. But they like did a really good job of making sure that the game master was like engaged enough, kind of a little bit of the sass, like you said, like they'd roast us.
So that's actually exactly what I'm talking about.
How crazy is that?
On.
Like really positive experience with them specifically, where you get a little bit of sass, but like at the same time, like you do get like help when you ask for it in a way that like guides you but doesn't give it away. And like I know that Richie and I and other times I've experienced game masters that almost like ruin a puzzle for you. It's like, dude, you didn't have like, don't tell me it's 12. Tell me like, hey, maybe you should multiply those numbers that you find around the room or whatever, like.
Actually, I think I lied. I think I'm going to Breakout. I get all of them confused. I'm sorry. I think I'm going to Breakout.
Well, either way, there's
about.
Honestly, I will say this too. I think for the most part, most of the time, the people that are in the escape room business do seem passionate and actually interested in building quality rooms that like actually trick people, but in a fair way.
So, and I don't know if I've talked to you about this before, but I got the opportunity through my
We
job
did.
to go
This
to
is
a
so
conference.
you and I had actually talked about that Labyrinth place
Yes.
before, but like forever ago. So
Okay.
I don't blame you for forgetting.
Forever.
But,
I feel like I remember that
you
now,
told me
yeah.
a little bit, but I'm so glad you brought it up because I was planning to ask. Yeah, tell us about this conference. This is like
Yeah.
so.
They actually have conferences for this. This is cool.
This is kind of like the horror industry.
They
like
do.
I do scare acting. They do like conferences for like makeup and effects and things like that.
Yeah, so actually Transworld.
Yeah, so you take over and
yeah.
talk about your experience with that. No.
Sorry. Yeah, Transworld, who puts on the horror conferences and stuff, also puts on their escape room conference. And this was like, I think the second annual one is the one.
Where
that
was
I
it
went
located?
To. And
That's cool.
this one was in San Antonio. I think they did kind of a tour, though. I think they did like a tour.
San Antonio is a cool town to visit. It's got the Riverwalk. It's got some cool historical sites, and it's got a lot of like fun just areas to hang out and sightsee.
Yeah, absolutely. And so not only was there a cool like convention floor where you got to walk around and see different like puzzle boxes that people were developing. Some people even set up like mini escape rooms in like just on the convention floor. So you would go through a little like one hallway escape room just with your team that you were walking around with. It was so cool. And there were some VR headset escape room situations. But then that night, and like 2 different nights, I think, you would actually go with randomly assigned other escape room owners. It was mostly owners. I was just there because I was a manager. It was the whole thing. And you would go to local escape rooms and then solve them as like groups, like randomly assorted groups of escape room owners, which solving escape rooms with escape room owners, that was like some X Games mode shit. Like that's like, now is the time to play, because if you don't solve this now, you're an embarrassment to your company. Like it is, it wasn't that serious, but that's how it felt.
You didn't want the other team
really
to
felt
beat
like
you.
You had to represent. No, not at all. And that was probably the coolest part. That seeing all the pieces, seeing the different puzzle boxes, that was cool. But everybody knows that if you spend enough money, you can put together an escape room. But it's cool seeing like the different escape rooms they had around town, because we actually played a 1st generation and a 3rd generation with the 2 escape rooms we played. So we played one where it was all like, magnifying glasses and locks. And then we played one where it was like we stuck our hand into things as like a puff of air would come out, and if we blocked that puff of air,
cool.
then like, this other thing would happen. It's like, oh yeah. So you could like you had to stick your hand in like sequence in these ones, and they would know if you got the sequence right by like if it blocked that like puff of, I don't know. It was very interesting. I think the best experience of that was just seeing all of these different rooms on their A game, because this sounds bad, but it kind of made me embarrassed because I mainly worked in that 80s room.
80s room, for what it's worth, is a room that I did with our friend who's been on the show many times, Toby Schofield.
Yes.
That's one of the very few other options that Richie didn't participate in, but that was a really cool room. It was like you were in basically your flashback to the 1980s. You were at a basement party, and you had an hour until the host parents were getting home. So you had to get out of the room in time without getting caught. It was super fun. They had references to Pac-Man, Back to the Future, A-Team, just all sorts of just really, really fun 80s content. And it was a really good time. Sorry, I just wanted to kind of like side tangent that.
No, you're totally good. I do think.
Oh, and we did get out.
So I think there are a few.
It wasn't a super different. I will say that one was one of the easier rooms that we ever did.
Yes, that is true. I do think it broke, and I adore the person who designed this room. I know him personally. He's a great dude. I do think that escape room broke one of what I feel to be the golden rules of escape rooms, which I think there are a few rules that escape rooms should follow. And I think one of them is that you shouldn't need any knowledge outside of the room
fair.
to complete the room. And it 99% was true for that room, but there is one puzzle.
Spoil it. Go ahead.
Where it's like it gives like it lists a movie.
That's right, and it was
like,
the DeLorean from Back to the
that
Future. It was the van from the A-Team, and I don't remember what the 3rd car was.
But you had to put the right car on the track, so it was the DeLorean.
Yeah, you had to know enough about the movie.
which that's
Knight
Miles'
Rider,
best
Yeah,
name.
it was
Kit from
Knight
Rider, yeah.
Knight.
And I do remember
Yeah,
that
Knight Rider.
there was
It's
an
Knight
actor
Rider.
in the room with us that she was the host of the party, or the yeah, that's her. And she
Danny,
got on to
yeah.
me for cheating, but that's because they had 3-digit combination codes, and as soon as I had 2 digits, I'm like, well, it's just going to be way quicker to try the other 10 numbers. She's like, that's cheating.
That's
You're
a numbers
bad.
game.
Well, that's
and I'm like,
totally
I'm
what
sorry,
me and-
but you didn't state that up front, Danny.
That's a numbers game, though. That's the smart way to do it. One person look for the clue, the other person go.
Oh, absolutely. And that's totally what me and my family do. And totally the reason DJ Danny did that is because we so know that's a short room and we want to try and stretch it. Like we're just trying to bully you into staying in
Play
the
by the
room
rules.
longer.
They were talking the
Please
wrong
stay at the
person
party.
about playing by the rules. I'm sorry.
Another one of the golden rules, I think, is also that once you use something, I think it should be done. Because I think one of the best strategies in escape rooms is making a pile of items you're done with and a pile of items yet to be used. And then there was one other thing that I think is a golden rule of escape
Never have to go
rooms.
back to
Whenever
previous
Can't
rooms.
remember what it is
just
right
like
now.
let it shine. It's fine. So I have
Yeah,
3
I'll
additional
yell it
topics
out.
that I want to talk about, and I'm happy if you guys branch onto other stuff as well.
Yeah.
Like we'll make this a 3-hour podcast if we need to. I don't care.
We're doing fine right now.
I really like this is
Okay.
making me want to go play.
I know. This is the
like,
part with
so
me.
bad.
We need a
Um,
24-hour escape room place. Like that.
so-
Let's go.
So we'll open up by Ruth. You can talk about your
Seriously.
experience 'cause you actually played a room today, but I want you to segue that into let's talk about
I did.
our best escape room experiences and maybe like props, like maybe even if it wasn't the best in execution, let's give some props to some of like the more creative ideas that we've seen attempted in escape rooms. Ruth, why don't you talk about your experience today, and then we'll segue into some of the experience that you just have fond memories of.
Yeah, so honestly, my experience today might be one of my
Woohoo!
favorite.
Shout 'em
escape
out
room
if you feel
experiences,
comfortable.
again,
Shout 'em out and let 'em
because
know
the
who it is.
people I was with. Yeah, no, it was the breakout rooms here in Plano. I am gonna spoil.
Miles, let's
a
go
little
here
bit.
tomorrow.
Fast forward like
One
30
of the
seconds
rooms.
if you don't want to hear
Uh,
the spoiler.
Yeah, but I'll get back to why it was my favorite. But since we just did the spoiler thing, I know I cracked up the game master because they had all these cups that would have a letter and a number in it, like in like the rim, so you could barely see it. And I figured out like, oh, this is supposed to be kind of like a grid. So I was like, okay, if this one's A2, I'll put A1 here and I'll put B2 here. And I kind of just like saw it in my head, so I mapped it out and I did it. Just using the other pieces as the reference from which to put the other pieces kind of deal. And I eventually found what I needed to find from it. And then like 5 minutes later, we're looking around and I see that like the chain link fence in the room has like A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. And they had a whole place for me to do it. And I was like, oh, I kind of just
Whoopsie.
did it on the
Whoopsie-doodle.
floor. You had a plan for me. But no, it came down again to like the people I was doing it with. I did this one with my family and my like little brother's girlfriend. And so for one thing, I just haven't been able to do an escape room in a long time. I hadn't been in an escape room, I don't think, since I stopped working at the escape room place. So it was just nice to get back to it after a really long time. But also, we are a very efficient escape room team, my family. And that's
It's
something
almost
I
like when
really
you have a
like
good
in,
like
an
team for
escape room
like
experience,
an
because-
RPG or even like a first person shooter where you've got like somebody's the support, somebody's the tank. So, yeah, go for it. D&D group for you, Ruth. Excuse me. That should be the
Yes,
obvious call to
absolutely.
you.
Yes. That's accurate. My little brother, as soon as we left the room, he was like, "Did you see what I did? I picked one thing, I picked everything, and I stayed out of Ruth's way." And I was like, "Thanks,
And
little
that's
bro."
why you're still here,
Appreciate
baby
you.
bro.
That's why you survived the room. But it was nice because I could highlight the things that were important. Someone would go off and look at that thing. And then I didn't feel the need to hover because I knew that they would find whatever there was to find. Like I had full faith in their abilities, so I was able to just... I know sometimes I can be very domineering in escape rooms and be like, "Are you doing that right? What if you did
PEMDAS,
this
idiot."
instead?" But with this group... With Chris, I'm able to fully trust that they can do their thing and just go, and it
Nice.
worked. We escaped with like 16 minutes left, so it was like a solid time. So yeah, I really gotta say, and today's was a good combination of things. I think some escape rooms fall into having to do the same thing too many times. Like I had one escape room where symmetry came into play like 2 or 3 different times. And I love, like, a theme is good, but also like this room today, like you had to throw foam rocks to knock some things off to make things over to make a clue visible, and you had to, of course, use black light, as Richie said, but
It's funny.
Make the grid system was interesting and one I hadn't seen before. There is kind of a stereotype of always using a magnet to fish a key out of somewhere. But there was an added thing today where there was a screwdriver we had no idea what to do with, and like that came into play, so that was cool, having to like use tools like in the room. I don't know, just like I like a good variety of things in the puzzle,
is there,
not too much of one thing.
Are there any specific escape room themes or specific escape room puzzles at all that you've ever experienced that like stand out to you?
Man, and this is conceited to say because I worked there for 3 years, but there's something really special, I think.
Let's go ahead and spoil it. Big Bang Theory already did.
Big Bang Theory already did, yeah. So I mean, there's a live zombie in the room with you trying to stop you from doing the things, and it's not even particularly what the puzzles in the room are. It really is more just that added effect of actively running away from the zombie, and the zombie's chain gets 5 foot longer every time you leave the room. And you can take it a really horrible direction and dogpile and pin down the zombie, or you can just have a whole
Or you
lot
can
of
just
fun.
hit somebody with a book.
Like,
what happens if the zombie grabbed you?
With a book, yeah. That you die and you have to go stand in the corner, which are marked by...
Was there any way to be resurrected or to become a zombie yourself?
There was not a way to be resurrected unless we did get a little hinky with it a little later on in the because and this kind of gets into the business side of escape rooms. So when I was hired with the company, we were under one company, and then this company sold my location to this other company. So we were still working in the same escape room with the same theme, but I had completely different bosses. So the person who I had worked for originally had created the escape room, so he had much more care and oversight for what went on in the room and what the rules were and weren't, and kind of preserving that universe. And then once we were kind of at a third party, there was much more like, whatever. So sometimes you'd make a deal with the zombie if they were losing and you'd get back in the game, but you had to like do the zombie a favor. That was the kind of the beauty of the room, was that if you weren't so smart, you could like sing to distract the zombie, or you could like do a drawing of the zombie, or just talk to the zombie.
Was the zombie a big fan of the Cranberries?
I put up with zombie. Yeah. So, I heard it a lot. But I saw so much shit in a day that if somebody was just nice to me, would have a conversation with me, I would start helping them. Like, you could really like make that experience.
And I assume from your side, on the business side too, it really is a lot like most jobs, about reading people, about understanding what the customer wants from the experience. If you got somebody that's there to solve puzzles, they might be offended if you help too much. But if you've got a 9-year-old birthday party and you just want little Jimmy to feel like a winner for a day, then let that motherfucker know how to beat the zombie. Yeah.
Exactly. And in that situation, of course, like, you identify the quiet one in the room, and then you like single them out with like the creepy, like weird look. And then when there's the big puzzle that has to be solved, you only let them.
Yeah, you kind of let them slide by, and because they're so good at sneaking.
So like you make sure, like
yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're so sneaky. They're so sneaky. Yeah, so it's also fun to be able to regulate in that way, like those kind of groups. And the other part was that then, as the professor, you would have a big old like clipboard in your hand, and you would be writing down like descriptors for everybody in the room, and you would give an evaluation at the end of like who did what. And it was a really good personality breakdown, honestly. I think you should always take like your first date to an escape room, like somebody, like you're interviewing for a job, escape room.
That's
like,
a very fascinating point,
more
honestly.
It's
a good breakdown of somebody's character under artificial, admittedly, but still pressure. Yeah, that's really cool. Richie, kind of moving over, same concept for you. I want to talk about your favorite experiences, and then also just like your favorite individual puzzles.
I want to start off by piggybacking a little bit off Ruth there, and I think like 75 to 80% of your escape room enjoyment is who you're with.
Oh yeah,
Like,
easily.
Miles and I never have talked
Absolutely.
about our strengths and weaknesses collectively as like escape room duos, but we just know each other so well that like it's we work together very well. And like I know, like I'm gonna
We
throw
play a lot of
Randy.
video games together, and I think it's similar. Like we just kind of
Yeah.
fall into our roles.
I'll throw Randy under the bus a little bit here since he's not actually in the conversation. But like
Fuck you, Randy.
we did the hardest escape room at the Red Door escape room, and they broke us off into groups, and it was Randy and one of his kids and me and Miles in the other room. And like Randy was not relaying the information over the radio the way where like Miles and I were literally like, I think he's missing something over there because we figured out everything in this room. And then eventually we figured out that we were right. But it's just like we have a good sense about it because we work well together and we played a lot, and that plays a lot into it. Some of my favorite experiences, one of them, like the whole experience of the labyrinth in Louisville is just fun all together. And like when we knew clues that other
So
people,
unique, so different from any other experience.
yeah. Well, and it's a level. Each escape room has like 3 or 4 different rooms, and you have to work your way up. If you fail in room 2, you have to go back to room 1 and start it over. So like when you're on your 10th try at a room, you can be blowing through the first 3 rooms easy. Still trying
You're
to
like,
figure out.
you're like, bam, 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 room 1, bam, 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 room 2, and it's like, what the hell do we do in room 3?
Yeah, but some of my favorite experiences. One of them was I think it was actually like the library experience. I don't remember what room it was, but Miles and I were running out of time, and he had figured out like 2 or 3 clues in the next to last room. And we get into the last room. You're supposed to steal a Fabergé egg. And then
That's what I was going to talk about too. We were to fill in your story a little bit. We were it was called Heist, and you and I were bank robbers, or I'm sorry, museum. We were robbing a museum, and we were supposed to steal a Fabergé egg from a museum.
But we've got like less than 2 minutes left, and we're in the final room. The egg is right in front of us, and we had
under an alarmed glass case.
Yeah, and we had just gone bang, 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 bang in the last few clues in the last few rooms. And there's a lot in this room, but there was a clue that said something about like listen carefully or blah, 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 or something like that. And the speaker alarm system kept playing over and over. And after the second time it played, I was just like grasping at straws, and I go, oh, they're speaking on the speaker. Let's just listen to how many times they say each line over the alarm. And it was the actual code you entered to get the Fabergé egg. And I felt really cool about that. And like we escaped with like I think seconds left.
Less than 10 seconds for sure.
Only-
And yeah, I think we actually ended up skipping a clue because we were supposed to solve a puzzle that told us that the intercom was giving us the final code, and Richie just kind of like went like with a Hail Mary, and it was absolutely correct. But yeah, like we just kind of hit this stupid groove that we can't like. It was like we both hit the zone, and it's like I solved the puzzle, he solved the puzzle, I solved the puzzle, he solved the puzzle, and it was just magical. But that was I was going to call that one out as my favorite as well. But I have more to talk about. Don't worry.
I had another one. Our
Go
friend Ricky and his wife V, who's not talkative at all. We did a prison escape room together where they start you in separate rooms in handcuffs. So Ricky and V were handcuffed together, and I was handcuffed to myself. And in this scenario, you find the key for like the other people, basically. And I had the stereotypical black light at one part. It took us a while to get going, but once we got going, Ricky and I started to find some clues. V found a clue every now and then, but there was one part where you had to use one of those toy grabber arm things, and you had to reach through a prison door and pick up a pair of keys on the table. And they gave me the grabber, and they literally went, "Richie, don't drop the keys." And I got the keys right to the door and dropped them. And it was where like once you drop them, you can't reach them. So the game master had to come in and put them back on the table, and then I let Ricky do it. But
okay, that's the third golden rule of escape rooms. There should be nothing
that's
you
a
do in the
rule.
room to then make
because when I
the
dropped
room
the
very
keys,
solve.
rule.
like we're screwed, and we only had like 10 minutes left at that point. But
Yeah.
they helped us out there. We got into the last room. We're trying to figure out we don't even know how to escape the room. We don't even know like what the clarifying thing is to get to escape the room. They were coming into the room to tell us we had ran out of time. And we had a couple different reference books where I found some numbers, and I entered them in as a phone number in the phone. And as soon as I hit call, the alarm above the door went off saying, "You've escaped." And they were opening the door to tell us we had failed. And they were like, "Oh my gosh, like what? You literally solved it at the last
the
second
buzzer."
possible." Like, kids.
That's
It
cool.
was a closer second than what Miles and I had, and I was just like,
That's awesome.
yeah, that's me. I dropped the key, but I had the last key.
That's very, very cool.
There's another one. There was one time Miles and I did
that's
something,
awesome.
and I think it was still at Red Door, and I think it was the first time you, me, and Randy did it, where it wasn't the most difficult.
That was the
room.
military themed one.
I think they said something when we got out where like you guys solved the hardest puzzle like quicker than anyone, but like some stupid puzzle gave us trouble. But
They tell
there's
that
one
to
where-
all the people that pay.
I'm sure they do. But they were so adamant that there was one clue that took everybody forever, and I don't remember what it was. I was hoping you would remember, but they were so
I
adamant.
don't either. I do. On that same note, though, the Red Door, the one that you talked about earlier, where we are in different rooms, I wanted to give them a shout out because one of my favorite experiences was we were basically, I can't remember the exact premise. Maybe we were spies on this one too, but we were locked in our hotel room and we were split up. There was 4 of us total. Richie and I were a pair, and our other friend and their kid was another pair. And we had walkie-talkies that we could talk to each other, but we were locked in our hotel room. And all of the clues to the puzzles for their room were in our room and vice versa. So we had to basically send information via the radio to help them solve their clues, and they had to give us the information we needed to solve our clues. And once we both escaped our rooms, we opened up into a larger area that we were then able to more traditionally work together. But just that element of separation early on, it's similar to the gel experience. There's a lot of the gel experience where you start in a separate cell or whatever. But like for some reason, that aspect of having to use the radio to communicate really made that one feel special. And then I recently told Ruth about this one just at an open mic or something. But excuse me. For Richie's last birthday, we actually did one. It was at the Parlor of Entertainment in the Louisville Mall. And this is actually a magician and his wife who like opened up this space in this dying mall. And this magician essentially got the space so he could build a stage that he could perform magic online. But then they've got all this other space. So they start building puzzle rooms and escape rooms. And what kind of sets them apart that I think is neat is they do have a traditional 1-hour escape room, just like you'd expect with 3 clues and multiple rooms that you progress through. But they also have smaller puzzle rooms that are designed. They're both less expensive and they're designed to take less time. So there's like rooms that they have that it's like, yeah, this is on average about a 10-minute puzzle. You go in, you spend like $3 and you get to do a 10-minute puzzle. They've got some that are slightly longer, and they do all sorts of different cool stuff. But the experience that we did for Richie's birthday was actually very much, they described it as a live action game of Clue, but it was very much based on the game Among Us. And it was, one of us was the spy, essentially. One of us was working against the rest of the group. And we were all trying to solve the murder. We needed to know who it did it, what weapon was, just like Clue, and then what room it happened in. But what was really cool about that game is the entire room, like the entire area was open. So we could actually walk into other puzzle room areas and get clues for our game.
We didn't know who the killer didn't know who they were until after the game started. They would take all of us away one by one, and they would tell one of the people, "You're the killer."
And the game master would actually, and they told us up front, the game master was actually working with the killer against the rest of the group. So it was really, really interesting and just like a fun twist on the genre. And I'm going to combine the last 2 topics that I wanted to talk about into one, and I'll give an example of both. I want to talk about rooms.
Well, first clarify that you were right when we won that game, because I was saving my guess for last because I knew you were going to single out your wife as the killer, and if you were wrong, I knew that you were. I thought Miles was the killer.
I watch a lot of serial killer documentaries, bro. Stay sexy, don't get murdered.
You were just so adamant about everything where I was like, Miles is way too over the top. He's clearly he's hiding something, but he was right. We won because Miles sold his wife out.
Fair.
Sorry, Emily.
No, that's totally fair. But I just thought that was a really unique twist. But the last thing I want to talk about, and again, if you guys have other things you want to talk about, that's totally fine. But just the things that are on my list, I want to talk about escape rooms that both exist that we know about that you have not gotten to try, but you're excited to try. And then I want to take that a step further. And I want to talk about escape rooms that don't exist that you would like to see, or ideas that you have that you could maybe evolve the genre of entertainment. But The first one, I'll start to give you an example and both time to think of what you want to say on this. But there's two of them that currently exist that I very much want to try. One of them was announced right before COVID, and I was actually looking into Richie and I going before everything shut down. But it's actually based on South Park. It's in Dallas. And you're actually in Mr. Garrison's classroom, and Cartman has done some shenanigans where you are trapped in this classroom, and you have to find out. And everything's super raunchy and South Park themed. It has very good reviews, and that's one that I was really excited to do. And then the other one I want to do is currently only available in Las Vegas. And I actually just went to Las Vegas, and I tried to make it happen, but the group of people I was with, which is just not the right group of people to do this experience with. But it's actually based on the Saw franchise, and you are actually put into a Saw trap. And I mean, obviously, I don't think they're really going to like torture or kill me.
You don't know.
But you don't know. They could. Yeah. This might be how I die. But legitimately, you are like put into Jigsaw's game. And again, it's exclusively in Las Vegas. It's supposed to be super high production value. It's very expensive. I'm not going to lie. But it's one that just like, as soon as I saw the trailer for it, I'm like, oh my God, I've got to give this a try. That sounds so, for a horror nerd like myself, that is like the ideal experience. And that brings me to an idea that I've had actually that I think would be really cool. I understand, admittedly, this will probably never work because it's just for such a small group of people. But I'm a scuba instructor, and I've always loved the idea of doing an underwater escape room where a scuba certification would be ideal, or be required, because some of the puzzles would actually be underwater. And I think a way that they could do this to make it more mainstream is make it so like the majority of puzzles are above water, but you have to work with at least one certified scuba diver so that they can do underwater stuff, working with the team at the surface to send them on tasks, essentially. So that's kind of my like fantasy escape room.
It's like a BioShock.
That would be
type of puzzle
cool
thing there. You can do a theme of BioShock.
So I want to end on Ruth on this. So Richie, I'm going to have you go next. Rooms that you know about that you'd like to try, and any sort of fantasy room that you have.
Man, that one time, I don't remember what the escape room was. I don't even remember what we did, but it was sometime that you, Emily, me, and Ricky did one right before we went to the Cobra Brewery in Louisville, where we saw them, and I was talking to the guy making it, the space shuttle one.
That was the first one we did. That was the very first one they did. The space shuttle room was the one they were building.
Yeah,
that wasn't yet available.
Yeah, I always wanted to go back. I just thought the idea of being trapped on a space shuttle where you're running out of oxygen. Like, that sounded like such a cool idea. I always wanted to play that one out, and we never got to go back and do it. The only way I could really see it evolving is maybe do one with a group of at least 4 where you're inside a dark maze where it's literally like the mazes you go to cross country where you have to stamp your little stamp card at each corner of the maze, then go to the middle. But it's like each person is by themselves in a different spot. And like you have to go and find a radio, and then you can communicate with each other. And then you have to find a way to get out of your like solitary confinement so that you can get together and take that step of being 2 versus 2 and coming together and making it everybody for themselves in the first room, just to like let that feeling of horror and loneliness and darkness sink in. Where I just think that'd be really creepy, but it'd be really interesting to see like how your brain works to get out of it. And you know, like Ruth said, maybe make it where like it's up to the individual to get out of that room, where it's not impossible, where like my person that's 3 rooms over that has no idea what they're doing won't get me out, but I can find a way to get me out, kind of thing.
It's still possible. It might just be more difficult. That's fair. Ruth, what about you? Rooms that exist currently that you've heard of that you'd like to experience, and then anything that you would like to put like a special twist on the genre.
Yeah, so I've actually never done a room where you start separately from your group or your group is separated in any way. And also the next room me and my family are talking about doing, this is only like the second room me and my family have done together since like that one in Mexico, which obviously wasn't the best experience. And today we like determined that like this is going to be something we start doing together. So I'm very excited about that. And the next one we're looking at is apparently the like OG room from Breakout, and that is like their kidnap room where you start handcuffed. So I'm very excited.
You'll probably just
that
like flex bend out of your handcuffs.
You start handcuffed or, like, restrained in a sort of way. Oh yeah, I'll be able to get all that. It'll also be a chance to show off, but no, I am very excited for that aspect of it. As far as there's a few different ideas for rooms that I think could be really cool. Some of them would be like somewhat licensing issues, and from working in an escape room, I know they wouldn't actually be practical. So I'll start from like least practical to like something I think could actually happen. Maybe I would really love to see like or I think there would be a market for a more expensive, kind of like the Saw,
where you get that
not
sort of
like the Saw, but budget
quality.
kind of like the Saw,
Yeah.
and pricing kind of like the Saw. Yeah, for some sort of. I'm only saying Bridgerton because that's very popular right now, but some sort of masquerade, like fancy dress, like I think takes place in a very nice, well decorated. Now again, it'd have to be heavily monitored because there'd probably be more breakable.
Maybe
stuff
it's got a
around,
really
so you
big
have to, like,
deposit.
make sure it's people who know what they're doing and have signed more shit. Yeah, really big deposit, something like that. But I think some sort of fancy dress escape room or like masquerade style escape room, I think would kill. I would really love to see just like a really well done Scooby Doo escape room.
Yeah.
I think that
You have
lends
to
itself so
unmask,
well,
like,
like the
6
bright
different
colors,
people.
like Mystery
Find your
Solved
keys to the
already.
mystery machine.
I think I would love that. Oh yeah,
I like your masquerade idea, but I
it'd
like
be
it as
amazing.
an actual masquerade party that you're having at like a friend's house.
I was thinking the
But
same
it's
thing.
a-
It's almost
it's
like
an
an
escape room
escape
that
room
comes to
at a
your door.
house. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the movie Game Night, like that, where they come to your
that
house.
comes to your door. Well, so I've actually one of the places I visited in San Antonio at the Room Escape Expo, they had a trailer,
That's
like
cool.
an RV that was built into an escape room, so they could like drive up and do it. So that kind of deal. But then the one that I've really thought about a few times, like in the past, is some sort of incorporating, and I'm sure somebody has done it somewhere, but incorporating
sense.
a room
Take a
escape
shot in
with a
each
bar.
room, and so like the
And
last room is so
either-
difficult to get through. That's,
Yeah. We used to, when we were the axe throwing range and the escape room, we used to hide either free tickets or discounted tickets to the axe throwing range in additional puzzles in the escape rooms. So you could do something like that where you can go to a bar and either just walk in the front door, or you can pay
Drink
15
tickets
bucks
or
to
whatever.
go to the 30-minute escape room.
Some
with
free
the chance of
nachos,
finding,
yeah.
drink tickets
yeah.
and stuff like that in the escape room. Yeah, exactly. Or it could be a kind of like you said, like a bar that is built with rotating like puzzles and clues and stuff in there that lead to
Yeah.
those. Maybe not even free whole drinks.
You get a
but just,
free
like,
hit.
Do it like
prizes
it's a
or,
bar
like,
with like a Chuck E.
merch or,
Cheese
like,
style
stuff like
prize
that.
table where like you get tickets as you go, and if you keep coming back, you can get to like the bigger stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
After like you spend about $8,000 on beer, you can get like a Nintendo Switch.
Absolutely.
sounds like our kind of place.
That's awesome.
Yes, exactly.
Very
So
cool.
like a
Well,
an
Ruth,
adult
as our
box
expert
Chuck E.
here
Cheese.
today, is there anything about escape rooms that we just haven't touched upon that you'd like to expand about?
No, I think we've talked about a lot. I think take your first dates to escape rooms. I think is what we've determined.
Yes.
Groupon is a great way to go experience.
I don't
escape
doubt it,
rooms,
but-
even though room escape
but they
owners
help.
hate Groupon.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But they help. Yeah. And I would say if you do have the opportunity to experience an escape room just with the group you're with, definitely
I
do
agree.
that. Sometimes
It
you may
makes it
have
better.
to pay more, but if you can do that, totally do that. And just always be nice to your game master. Don't try to make their lives hard. because
And
you
also,
can
it's like
really
a restaurant.
easily.
Just
Don't try
more
and
than
destroy their
likely,
stuff
if your
instead.
food came
Fix
out
it.
wrong, it wasn't your server's fault. So like, chill. And like, honestly, even if it is your game master's fault, something went wrong.
As much
It's
as
they're human, man. Like, chill. It's a game. We're not really escaping from prison.
absolutely.
Calm down.
Absolutely.
Unless
Yeah. Richie, is there anything that you feel like we
100%. Like,
missed
that's
today,
what I
or do you
wanna
think we
stress
got
more
it
than
all
anything.
covered?
I just want to say, if you've never done an escape room before, like I remember those days where I'd heard a few people talk about it before, and then honestly, to go back to Ruth's first story, I saw the Big Bang episode with the escape room, and I was like, I've heard like 2 or 3 of my friends talk about these. That seems like a lot of fun, honestly.
Yeah.
If you haven't tried it, absolutely go try it. Just do it at least once in your life, because it's just a lot of fun. And yes, a lot of it depends on the people you go with, but like everyone out there should know who they should go do puzzles with. Like it's common common knowledge who your smart friends are. So just make sure you have a good group of people. If you want to come do one with me and Miles, just move to the DFW area. We'll do all of them with you. And now we got Ruth doing with us too. So
Yeah. We're
we
gonna
need to do
go.
this
We're
too.
gonna make it a day so that we can go do that labyrinth. We gotta
Yeah.
make that happen.
I feel like the three of us would be a powerhouse on like any escape room.
I
Like,
really do.
Yes.
I really do.
It's-
Please.
and then Randy's kid too. Like
Absolutely.
holy crap, helped with a lot of those. Randy, you could sit the next one out, buddy.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, for real, for real. That's awesome, guys. This was super
And
fun.
Bolton, yeah.
Ruth, I'm so glad you're able to join us tonight. Why don't you go ahead and plug Funny for a Girl and any other thing that you would like to send out to the whoever listens to this. Our good friend Chris Manley will check out your comedy.
Yeah. So you can find me online. You can find me online at Funny for a Girl. It has a couple underscores in it. It's funny_for_girl, all spelled out. Everywhere, TikTok, Twitter, the whole deal. I'm actually headlining the
I
Comedy
heard the
Arena
host for
May
that show
14th
is
and
really
15th.
awesome.
Check out comedyarena.com to get tickets for that.
Yeah. He's
You know,
actually having
like,
second
I
thoughts.
can't
He's
even
like, should
believe
he do
I
that?
got him. I
But
got the
no,
best
it's
host in the game. It's pretty insane. We bagged him.
I call bullshit.
Should I lower
gonna be an
myself
awesome
to
show.
be on that bill? No, but I think Miles Francis is going to come through for us. It really is going to be a cool show.
Thank
so
you so much for
definitely
being
come
here.
out
This
for
is really fun.
that.
Definitely.
And thank you so much for having
Anytime
me.
we have a
This has been great.
topic that you want to be a part of, we'd love to have you again. I know we've talked D&D in the past. We're now talked escape rooms. I'm confident there's going to be other things that come along that we can have a great conversation about. Richie,
The escape room we need to do is you have 1 hour to prepare for your fight against Cobra Kai.
strike hard, strike fast, no mercy, sir.
Those are the clues.
Guys, thank you so much for
Yes.
downloading this podcast. Thank you for joining us on our side tangents with Best Darn Everything. For those of you that come along with these journeys, for those of you who are like, shut up, dudes, we just want to hear about The Simpsons. We're not done with that. We're going to keep going. And actually, we have a really, really cool guest coming up that I'm just so excited about to have back on the show. She's a Simpsons writer. You know who it is if you've been paying attention, but I'm just going to leave it at that for right now. That'll be coming up very, very soon. We are going to keep stalling. We're going to do another Best Darn Everything to give us some time to coordinate with her. But don't quit on us. We're coming back with The Simpsons, and we can't thank you enough for all of you that download, share, like, subscribe, donate on Patreon. All of that is just so, so helpful.
Yeah, and I just want to say, like, this whole thing's happening because we've gone to the live format. So, like, that makes, like, we've always had difficult scheduling conflicts that you guys never know about because we just air the episodes 1 week at a time. So it's a little crazy having to do this every week. But, like, honestly, man, excuse me, burp. I want to say this to everyone out there. I love the Best Darn Everythings just as much as I love Best Darn Diddley. So I enjoy doing these. I hope you guys too. If you do love Miles and Richie and everything Diddley and Ruth, make sure you follow Miles at Mr. Most Days Off. You can follow me at @TheWiz_, the same way Ruth's underscores are, Kid23. But most importantly, you can follow our show. That's at Best Darn Diddley. That's DIDDLY.
One more time, big thank you to our guest, Ruth Banks. Make sure you follow her online. Check out her comedy. She really is funny, not just for a girl. She's just goddamn funny. But again, thank you so much. We will be back again next week. I honestly have no idea what we're talking about next, but it'll be something that we both are passionate about, and we're going to try to have a good time.
Oh, thank God I can escape this conversation.
And until next time, be cromulent to each other.